everyone, welcome to Correlations. I'm Jessica DiRuzza, and I'm here with Matthew Stelzner.
Hi, Jessica.
Hey, Matthew.
So nice to be here with you.
I know, it's
Live.
so good. We're here in person in Siesta Key, Florida. What's behind the curtain is the amazing bay with dolphins swimming and mating. It's mating season now. Now that the sun is entered Taurus, we're in the ripeness of springtime. And you can really feel it here. I mean, this is obviously the tropics, but all the vegetation is super lush, and the birds are chirping, and it's just very vibrant time of year here. April is one of the most beautiful months here in Florida on the Gulf Coast. The weather's like around 85 degrees or so, and just sunny, and the humidity's not up yet. So we've been really having an amazing time. Taking walks on the beach and going swimming. And yesterday, Matthew and I took a really nice long walk on the beach across the street here from my office, and we dived into this really exciting conversation. And so we thought that we would try recording today and seeing how that wants to deepen and come through again. So today is April 23rd, and this is a really potent time astrologically. The world transits are pretty dynamic and pretty strong, and so that's kind of the large umbrella of what we want to be talking about today is world transits, but specifically we're honing in on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, right? It's the hot topic right now for the astrological community. It's really buzzing, and the reason that is that the Saturn-Pluto conjunction started to come in at the beginning of this year, 2018, and it'll last for the upcoming 3 years until 2021. But it's a special Saturn-Pluto alignment because it's also square to Uranus still. So we've been in the Uranus square Pluto since 2007, 2008, goes to around 2020. And so it's ending with this Saturn conjoining Pluto and Capricorn, squaring Uranus, which is right on the verge for moving into Aries and to Taurus. So we wanted to talk about the Saturn-Pluto energy and its relation with the Uranus-Pluto energy, and kind of dive into different ideas that we've been having around both world transits, but also specifically the metaphors that we use when we describe or interpret astrological correlations. Is there anything else you want to say before we jump in?
Oh, just that I'm excited to explore more what we were exploring yesterday, and I'd say let's just see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, part of what's interesting for me around the Saturn-Pluto alignment is, Matthew, you talked about this in your WTF 2018 intuitive forecast that you just released on YouTube a few days ago, talking about, oh my gosh, I totally just blanked.
That's okay. I was talking about the different ways of envisioning this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And we were talking about there's so many different metaphors that you can choose to evoke the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. There's lots of different avenues into it. And so we were just exploring different possibilities there, I think.
Yeah. There was something specifically that you said in that video that kind of activated this for me. But I think, honestly, why it is that I want to talk about it is because I'm noticing a lot of a strong emotional response that I'm having to the metaphors that I'm hearing being used to describe this transit. I'm actually feeling a certain level of honestly repulsion and some rejection to the way that I'm hearing astrologers imagine into what this archetypal complex means and signifies for us on a collective level. And I think that's really what kind of spurred, this process for me. But I think out of all of the planetary combinations, out of all 45, Saturn-Pluto is definitely in the top 3 for being the most prone to negative and dark projections from us as human beings onto those archetypes and this time period. I mean, it is the energy that is most associated with darkness, fear, constriction, terror, oppression. And so there's a tendency just in the imagination when seeing this combination coming into alignment to start to have an emotional response to the alignment that tends to be more prone toward fear.
Right.
There's something that gets evoked in our imagination that I feel is constricting. And there's a kind of a narrowing and an oppression of consciousness in my being that happens where, like, I can't quite see the whole wide spectrum that maybe I would be able to more easily feel into or see when I think of, let's say, the Uranus-Neptune alignment or the Jupiter-Uranus alignment.
Sure.
And so I'm wanting to bring a curiosity to that because that doesn't feel resonant to me. That doesn't feel in alignment to the way that I understand and experience the archetypes in general, but particularly the combination of Saturn-Pluto.
Yeah, I think we're maybe getting at a deeper meta issue, which is like the responsibility that each of us has to imagine these energies in a way that's, affirming and where there's a good potential for aligning with the highest ways of imagining rather than kind of living in fear of the more perhaps problematic ways of relating to the energy. And I think there was, we were specifically talking about how sometimes this combination is associated with contractions, different kinds of contractions, and ultimately, whether it's economic contractions or contractions in history in general, or like the metaphor of birth contractions. And I think we got into a conversation about like different ways of thinking about birth and how you work with the metaphor of birth as it might relate to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and this moment that we're in.
Yeah, as a woman and someone who, I haven't given physical birth to a human being yet this lifetime, but I've done a fair amount of reading into it and just sitting with it and meditating on the idea of the birthing metaphor or analogy, really. And I have a strong resistance to describing what's happening when someone is actually giving physical birth as birth contractions. Coming particularly out of the book of Ina May Gaskin and Spiritual Midwifery, which is an excellent, amazing resource for, I think, everyone to read, but particularly mothers or soon-to-be mothers that want to go through the birthing process with as much awareness as possible for it to be a supported, natural, organic experience with a midwife or a doula or even a doctor. And in that book, Ina May, in the spiritual midwifery school, I guess you could call it, or perspective, describes the contractions as rushes. They're not contractions, they're rushes. And then the way that it's described again and again is that it's just energy that's coming in a concentrated form, and it's a wave, and the wave is a rush. And what the woman wants to do is to stay on top of the rush. And so with the support of the partner and of the midwife or doula, the woman can stay on top of the rush, both through her breathing and through actually keeping her eyes open and in a present, loving gaze, either with the other people in the room or just being present to what's happening in her physical birthing environment. And that when we can do that, when we can breathe, when we can stay present, when we can keep our eyes open and have that loving support and give the love back in return, that is what allows the rushes to come through in a way that isn't registered as much as pain, but is more of a profound energy that's coming in to help the mother birth the child. And I really appreciate that reframe, because it's a much more empowering reframe. It naturally takes out the kind of victim orientation that can happen when we feel like something from the outside is happening to us, especially if it feels like it's happening outside of our control or against our will. We can take that perspective of being disempowered and being the victim. And I think that there's something in the connotation of the word contraction, especially in relation to the birthing metaphor, that can feel that way, because it's not something outside of us that's causing the rush. It's a natural part of the human body and the way that the power of a woman's body to actually help generate this powerful force that allows life to come into the world.
Wow. I'm just taking that in for a second, Jessica, because there's a lot of deep ideas and thoughts and awareness in what you've said. Because I just love this idea of the rush of energy and using that as a metaphor for, like, because that's in a way how you have to relate, or a way that you can choose to relate to any transit, whether it's personal transit or collective transit. There are rushes of different kinds of energy. Do you think that's a fair analogy?
I think that's fair to say, yeah.
So Pluto, do you think Pluto is equivalent to a rush of energy?
I think
on
so.
Its own?
I think so. If we had to pick one planet to correlate a rush to, I think Pluto.
Yeah, because it's like a force of nature.
Yeah, and it's biological. Yeah, force of nature. There's a potency. There's an intensity to it.
Right. It could also be a rush of consciousness, which would be more of a Pluto-Neptune kind of quality, maybe.
Yeah, or if we think about, as you were mentioning in the WTF video, like the Kundalini rising, that's another form of a rush of energy. We're just talking about an increasing, a building of energy. Right.
So I want to just work with the metaphor a little bit, like as it might be. We talked a little bit how Pluto-Uranus would be like rapid pulses of these rushes, like that they would be coming rapidly and intensely during the Pluto-Uranus square.
Yes.
Like late delivery, late labor, where more rapid rushes.
Yeah, so what happens is as delivery continues, at first the rushes are further apart, they're not as intense, they're not as powerful, they're not as strong. Let's just call it that. They're not as strong. And then as the woman gets farther into the delivery process and the baby starts to come down the birth canal, the rushes increase. And they increase in succession and in strength.
Right.
And so, yes, the Uranus has that tendency to have things happen rapidly. Right? And the way that it amplifies consciousness is by a kind of electric quickening.
Right.
And so over the last 10 years now, during the Uranus square Pluto, I think it's fair to say that the majority of people in this world, under this world transit, during this world transit, have experienced a succession of increasing potency of rushes, of waves of energy that we've had to catch in our individual lives, but then also increasingly as a global civilization, which is what it seems that we're moving toward as a species right now.
And so the Pluto-Uranus square might kind of constellate a kind of energy that feels like late-stage delivery.
Yes, I think it has the tendency to do that.
Because I certainly have felt like, especially the last 5 years, as this Uranus-Pluto square has been like fully peaking or whatever, I don't know what it's like to give birth, but I feel like I've been giving birth to myself with the kind of intensity and rapidity of these pulses of transformational, life-giving energy.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I want to kind of re-ground back into some things that the midwives in this book, Spiritual Midwifery, really point out, which is really healthy or successful births are ones where there is an exchange of loving energy between the mother and her support team. And so because the mother can't yet hold her baby and give that love and sweetness to the baby, she needs to give it to the partner and the supporting midwifery team. And they then get high off of her high of love and give her back through their presence and attention on her that love, and it creates a circulation of love or of eros that flows, and that naturally relaxes the mother to not only open her pelvis, her cervix, for the baby to come through, but it allows her being to feel safe enough to do that. So the difference between a mother that feels safe in delivery and not safe is the softness of her belly. So when a mother feels very safe and relaxed and supported emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, the belly is very soft. And the softer the belly is, the more that she's able to ride the rushes in a way that feels more euphoric and joyful. It's like they often describe it as like the best altered state of consciousness or psychedelic experience that one has ever had. And a lot of these women have had psychedelic experiences, so they can compare. And the profound love that they feel in that moment for not just the people in that room, but all mothers who have ever lived, and the connection to all beings on earth or to the cosmos is so immense, because the self is stretching to a point of such vastness that the heart chakra is able to feel, and the sixth chakra is able to see what is always here, but the mother is able to tap into those waves and dimensions of consciousness more easily. Whereas when the mother feels scared, feels threatened, is not feeling supported, not feeling emotional attunement from the people in the room, or the people in the room are not clear and centered, the belly gets hardened. And when the belly gets hardened, not only can the rushes not happen, there's a lot of resistance, and so the energy is being blocked instead of supported, that the mother moves into fight or flight, and it slows down the process of the waves coming through. And that's when it gets painful and scary and terrifying. I mean, really like a wild animal, like their life being threatened.
Because you're not riding on top, and you're not in that relaxed love place.
Love place, yeah.
So, well, I mean, it's so helpful, I think, to just hear all that, and to then think about if that's the best and most supportive way to work with these rushes. How does that apply to working with transits in general, and then how does it apply to this specific world transit of Pluto-Saturn, which seems like it could be either one of those that you're describing, the potential for the positive Pluto-Saturn versus the more challenging version of it.
Right. I think first of all, I want to say that every single transit, no matter what the combination of planets are, and I'll say this, I'm sure at least 1 million more times this lifetime, has the potential to go either way. It is absolutely 100% not the transit or the planets that are deciding whether or not we feel open and relaxed and safe, or shut down, terrified, and scared. The determinant of that is something that transcends astrology, in that the astrology never causes whether or not we feel safe and supported. What does that is the types of relationships we're in. If we're in healthy, supportive relationships that are filled with love, whether that's with our partners or our friends or our family, that is the number one determinant on how we are doing. We're social beings. We're animals that are social animals. And we absolutely need loving, supportive relationships and loving, supportive environments. And when we have that, and we feel that, that allows us to feel safe and to trust and relax more.
Right.
So you could, have, let's just pretend you had all trines and all Jupiter transits, and Saturn went on vacation and left the solar system for a while.
Oh, if only.
It wouldn't matter the slightest if you're not in healthy, positive, supportive, loving relationships and environment in your life. And that includes with yourself, of course.
And that model of what is most effective in that birthing circle includes the intention of loving your supportive people.
Yes.
So that they can get jazzed to support you to work with the rushes.
Yeah. I mean, the Beatles really had it. I get high with the help from my friends. Like, I get love from the help with my friends. Like, I get high. My friends help me get high, a high vibration. Like, that's what we do. We help each other either raise or lower our vibration.
Right.
By the way that we talk to one another, by the way that we treat one another, by the way that we behave, by the ways that we give signals and cues on whether or not I'm paying attention to you and listening to you and respecting you and empathizing with you and, tuning in with you. So it's just really important for me to say because, especially moving into the Saturn-Pluto transit that has the most potentiality for us to project onto it negativity, fear, a lack of safety, a lack of trust, that it's important for us to remember that it's not the transit that's doing that. It is the health and well-being of our own self-care and the care that we have within our closest relationships or most significant relationships in our lives.
Because otherwise you're going to tighten your belly and feel like you're being overtaken by falling off of the wave. Yes,
and resistance is absolutely one of the key components of suffering. When we resist and we shut down and, we disconnect from ourselves, that's where a lot of suffering comes from.
Right.
It's agonizing. Like, anytime I get disconnected from myself, I am in agony. I might experience it as disassociation. I might experience it as angst. I might experience it as anxiety. But really, it's pain. It's painful to be disconnected from myself. So first and foremost, I need to get connected with myself and stay connected with myself. And I do that through the help of my support system. And that goes for people and animals and the plant world and, the metaphysical or non-physical realm. Like, all of those beings are our connections and our resources, all our relations.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I loved about what we were talking about yesterday was we were getting clear that one really positive potential of Saturn-Pluto is kind of slowing down the intensity of the rushes that have been so rapid and electric.
Yes.
Up in especially the last few years, but going back to 2008.
Yes.
This is a moment where you were talking about kind of slowing down to then like integrate more, but you're saying more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't know about everyone else, but after a decade of this Uranus-Pluto energy, I'm really coming to the end of my limit or my capacity to go through these rapid rushes, this rapid succession of building strength of rushes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the phase in my life where I'm wanting to stabilize. I really want to stabilize, integrate everything that I've gone through, especially over the last 10 years. That, there's been a profound inner awakening in my being. My soul has definitely grown and expanded in my awareness and in my capacities. There's been a lot of stretching and a lot of channeling of pretty powerful transpersonal energies that have been coming through and affecting all realms of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm ready to turn that down a little bit, not off, but down to a frequency that can stabilize the waves so that I can have an opportunity to integrate everything that I've been through. Because there's been so much growth and awareness and expansion, I'm ready now to take the time, slow down to take the time to become the lessons and the insights and the experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this. It's really helping me to reflect on the last, I think back to 2011, there's a lot that was happening for me starting in 2011. That's what was leading into 2012, which there's so much imaginal potency around that year. And for me, it was a really big year and the before and after the turn of 2012. And then since then, it just has felt like these really rapid, intense, transformational pulses that you could easily fall off the wave with, and crash and have lots of challenges and amazing gifts for like high frequency, intensity transformation.
Yes.
And what that can be. It can totally bring an ascension process of your personal potential. Mm-hmm. And there's a thrilling quality to that, but it's also, like you're saying, you get kind of exhausting and, it takes tremendous energy to kind of stay on top of it.
Yes.
And so to think about the difference between phases in our individual lives where there's this kind of rapid, punctuated equilibrium thing where there's a burst of new potential, but then the need for like slowing down the intensity and frequency of the waves. So it's like the difference between these really closely and fast waves versus like these kind of slow waves where you start to be able to more easily ground, more easily, kind of move into a slow, deep process versus a really fast, deep process.
Yes. Yes, that's why particularly I've been looking forward to this transit, the slowing down, the stabilizing, the integrating. Like, okay, it's time to honor the Saturn part of this equation, which is how do I give form to everything that's been being, you could say being birthed or being awakened. I mean, I think so many people that I've been in contact with have experienced themselves over the last 5 years in particular. Bursting is a good way to describe it, like bursting through, like here's the ceiling threshold and then bursting through it and like, whoa, in this whole new world, new life, new way of being, new way of perceiving, new way of understanding reality, new way of understanding what life is and what's happening here. And I think that it's been thrilling, it's been exciting, it's been exhausting. I mean, I have some fatigue from it all. And now it's the chance to be mature about that and, to honor the beauty and the power of what has been awakened in my own self. That now it's time for me to honor that by becoming that. And for me, this is what wisdom is. Wisdom is a becoming of the knowledge, the ideas, the awareness, the insight. We can all day long see something, right? A pattern in our life that we have. But if I can't take the time to slow down and practice living into that new way of being that I've awoken to, like, oh, I don't want to be like X anymore, I want to be like Y. I can think that all day long, but if I don't take the time to try it, then it's not going to actually become embodied. It's not going to become woven into the fabric of my existence and my being and my life and my relationships. And that for me is an inherently I'm going to say the word vulnerable here because it's a vulnerable process, and it's messy because if something is new for me to do, that means I haven't had experience yet doing it, which means I'm not like really probably very good at it yet. Mm-hmm. You know, it's probably not super clean and clear and like how to take those steps forward and how to, you know, show up in that new way. And so I think there can be a tendency to resist wanting to try on the new thing because we're not super good at it like we are the things that we've been doing for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's part of the challenge of the ascension process in our own lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sort of like the Pluto. Uranus is more towards the sky, and so Pluto kind of brings the energy up. But then what you're talking about is taking that energy and kind of bringing it down and really integrating it fully into the third dimension. So you kind of raise up to the fourth dimension, but then figure out the way to bring that energy fully into this realm, this dimension.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. I mean, Uranus, Prometheus, has that tendency to go to the mountaintop or find the highest peak there possibly is, get that perspective, download the insights, download the vision. There's a radical sense of epiphany, and it's super exhilarating and exciting, and whoa, breakthroughs.
Right.
And then Saturn says, okay, and let's ground that. Let's root that. Let's be that. Let's become that. Let's live that. Let's take the time to implement the vision and everything that was happening at the peak. Mm-hmm. And Saturn takes time. It's not a quick process. The insights are quick. When we have an insight, we have an epiphany, it might have taken us a long time to get there, but once we have it, it's a very quick kind of lightning flash, right? That's why it's called the lightning flash of insight. That part's quick. The part that takes time is becoming the new vision, the new idea, the new perspective.
Right. Yeah, I think there's this potential with the Pluto-Saturn conjunction that, you know, is quite it's the end of a whole Pluto-Saturn cycle and the beginning of a whole nother one. Mm-hmm. And the way the archetype can be such like deep, profound, structural transformation, and the process of that, what it is to have deep structural transformation that can actually, like where you're building a new foundation to structure your life upon. I was thinking about how like the breakthrough is Pluto, Uranus, but then it's like you come down and you're somehow building a new foundation, or you're going through a slower process that involves restructuring and new foundations.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, one way that we could think about this is like, for example, you know, by and large in the, I don't know how to frame this. Like, I don't want to call it the Western world or the developed world, because, well, that makes me think of another topic that I want to talk about, world transits, and why I don't think we can give universal descriptions or prescriptions for them. But, like, for example, for the people in the world that are aware that there is an ecological crisis and that we're in the sixth mass extinction, that there's, you know, over 20,000 species a year dying, and the ocean's filling up with plastic, and there's beached whales full of bellies of plastic. I mean, or the fact that the hurricanes are getting stronger and the tornadoes are getting stronger and the winters are getting more intense, like all of that. okay, like we've had the insight, we got it. Now it's time for us to become it, to live it, to work together, to do it together. Mm-hmm. We don't need to keep having the insight that we're having an ecological crisis. Now, that's tricky because when I say we, I'm talking about a particular population that A, has the awareness that this is even happening, and B, actually believes that it's happening. So I get that it's kind of a little tricky territory, but it's supposed to be an example of like, okay, yep, I don't really need to see any more films about describing that we are essentially killing a lot of life on this planet. I got that part. Mm-hmm. And we need to move into the next phase of the moral imagination of how to be with that. And I think a lot of people are doing that, but it's just to illustrate, like, there's a point when having an insight really no longer serves anymore. It's just like an intellectual candy. It's like a high, it's like, oh, that's sweet, that's tantalizing. I'm just gonna keep having more insights, or like the person who just keeps getting more and more degrees. Like, I'm just gonna keep going to school and learn forever. There can be a tendency within that to avoid the application of what it is that has been learned thus far. When is it time to actually become those things? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what Saturn-Pluto is asking of us. I think one thing that it's asking of us is to become the lessons and the teachings and the insights and the awarenesses that we've had, especially over the last 10 years.
Right. And there's ways in which the Pluto-Saturn combination has a lot to do with like conservation and protecting nature. And how would you see that like applying to our individual lives? Like, how does it Saturn-Pluto seems to me relates to sustainability and long-term structural processes that are sustainable.
I think it comes down to health. Like, if you were talking about what we can do individually, I think the number one thing we can do is take care of ourselves. That is the most important thing in my life these days. It is at the top of the list every day. How am I going to take care of myself today? What am I going to do to nourish my body, my soul, my mind? And I make sure that my day, my Saturn time and structures serve that goal and that intention. And that's what leads to sustainability in my own life. If I'm fatigued, if I'm malnourished, if I'm not emotionally or spiritually being fed, I am a leading cause of the environmental crisis. Just think of it. Environment, ecology, I mean, sometimes we think of like the plants and animals, but like ecology and the environment is every web that we are a part of. And, you know, that starts at home and in our communities and in our family circle and our friend circles. And so, like, am I showing up and taking care of myself so that then I am available when it's time to commune and relate to show up and be present and help take care of the moment or the person who's in front of me.
Right. So you're talking about creating, through slowing down, a deep process of slowing down that's actually part of nature, that nature has these pulses that sometimes are really rapid and other times they move towards slowing down and starting to build sustainable structures of self-care.
Yeah, I mean, everything in nature points to that, the cycles of the moon, you know, to move from the new moon to the full moon back to the new moon, from dark to light to dark, or the seasons of the year from spring, summer, fall, winter. Every cycle, no matter how small or how big, or even the cycle of the day, we're awake, we sleep, we wake, it always includes rest, gestation, slowing down.
Right.
It's woven into every cycle, no matter how micro or how macro.
Like springtime is a big rush time, big rush of energy, and winter time's slowing down time.
Hibernation time,
right?
Reflection time, conservation.
So Saturn Pluto is more like winter in a way, and if we can imagine it in the way that it can be like more like hibernation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in certain regards it can correspond to stopping certain things, but I think of it as an elongation. It's like thinking of time as elongating.
Oh, that makes sense.
Saturn Pluto kind of elongates things, and so there is a depth still, and a lot can still happen. There's still a strong quality, but it's an elongation, and so
elongation of the sense of time.
Yeah. You know, I mean, Saturn Pluto definitely wants to play the long game. It's not so much oriented toward that instant satisfaction. So like,
oh, that's great.
You know, like a classic example is like they said, like, oh, it's during this time that we can really labor, you know, put our labor into something that's going to be enduring.
Right.
Into the world. It's often a time period of hard work and focus, and you know, like one's magnum opus supposedly can come out of this time, which I mean, of course, does happen. But I mean, I think that can happen during any transit. But my point is that the way that time is used and how we spend our energy in the time that we have directly affects the quality of what it is that we're producing in this time. And so there isn't that instant gratification of seeing instant results. It's a building towards something day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. Mm-hmm. And after we do that, no longer are we doing that thing over time. We have become that thing. It's no longer something separate from us or outside of us. It's something that we are. And so you can look at that with exercise. Like, I don't really think of myself as exercising anymore. I exercise every day, but I don't think like, okay, it's time to go exercise. It's like, no, like I am exercise. I am an active, embodied person who raises my heart rate and sweats because I'm engaged in living and participating with life in a way that I get joy out of running and swimming and biking and hiking. So I've done it now enough through time and routine, Saturn, that it's become who I am. And I think that's what Saturn-Pluto time periods can offer us, is that which we build and lay a foundation for, brick by brick, step by step. Eventually we take enough steps and realize there are no steps anymore. It just is. It's being.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that really resonates for me. And I'm thinking about how this is the beginning of a long collective transit. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction is a 3-4 year period, and then we tack on the Saturn square Uranus. It's a 4 or 5 year process that we're at the beginning of. Yes. So having a sense that this is about moving slowly. It's not as wild as the Uranus-Pluto square has been. Like, we're just like really trying to stay on top of these really fast rushes.
Yeah.
Versus this is more like an early labor type wave, or is it?
Yeah, so that's where, like, yes, on one hand, if you're using the labor analogy, then yes, it would be the early stages of labor. The rushes are slower and less pronounced, and maybe they even stop, or
right.
You take a nap for a while, you eat some food, like
right.
It's but this is, I think, kind of going into another area that we want to talk about, which is I think we need to get outside of the birth analogy, because Saturn-Pluto also can relate to you already birthed whatever you birthed. You have, let's say, you've gone through this awakening and rebirth of self, where like, for example, before this transit started, I was not a psychotherapist.
Right.
Now I am. I've birthed that part of my being.
Mm.
I'm not, it doesn't resonate for me in where I'm at with in that cycle of being a psychotherapist, that I'm in the now early stages of birthing.
Okay,
that.
I hear you now. Yeah.
That's already happened.
Right.
What's happening now is I'm sustaining, and I'm continuing to build what it is that I've already accomplished. I already crossed that threshold.
Got it.
I'm already initiated. Now I'm tending to my practice, and I'm deepening and growing in my practice. And since my psychotherapy practice is my spiritual practice, one component of it, I'm now doing the work of clearing.
Sustaining, yes.
I'm clearing, I'm clearing the things in myself and therefore my practice that I need to do in order to be in greater flow and alignment with myself and my clients. So Chris Beisch talks about this in his work with Dark Night, Early Dawn, and Diamonds from Heaven, which is when he talked about his arc of his 73 psychedelic high-dose LSD sessions that he had with his sitter, putting on blind shades and going internally, that over this 20-year psychedelic odyssey, as he calls it, that there was an internal process happening to the sessions, that through tracking his personal transits and the world transits, he realized that there is a process that is happening, I kind of want to say like internal to consciousness, or as part of the structure of consciousness, that transcends transit astrology, in that in the death rebirth cycle, there is a natural process of when we are birthed into a new level or state of consciousness, the next, he said, often 5 sessions or so were used to clear out the debris, the muck of what got blasted open. So like when we blast into a new realm, at first it's like, whoa, discovery, epiphany, oh my gosh. But then there's all this debris, and it's time to go and clear it out. And I think that is a process of stabilization. You're stabilizing at the next level or state of consciousness, and that takes time and work, and that's often, it's grueling. And for me, that's what Saturn-Pluto is. It's that purification and clearing, which is a way to, again, sustain and stabilize, therefore integrate what's happened. So I don't necessarily see it as early stages of labor, as more of I see it as becoming the teachings that we've already been blessed and given.
Right. And clearing what's in the way of them being fully integrated and embodied.
Yes. In full harmony of their potential.
Right.
And our potential with them. And I think that's probably the key definition of spiritual bypassing, or any kind of bypassing, is, I think the thing that the New Age movement is most guilty of is like having all these profound metaphysical insights and then not necessarily putting in the work and the time to try and anchor and ground and become those insights, because that's the difficult part. I mean, that's the kind of, in a way, traditionally not fun part. It's not that sexy in a way, but yet it kind of actually really is, because it's the most rewarding part of the journey, is the Saturn-Pluto part of the journey, if we're to bring it back to what that archetypal combination represents.
It's most satisfying because that's the time where you're really fully embodying and structuring your life from the awareness, and just how satisfying that is.
Yeah, because it's a call and response with the universe. When we become the new thing, we are now engaging in a new form of participation with life. And there's a reward to that. And the reward is the new experience of relating. So how could I ground this in an example? So one of my growing edges right now, psychospiritually, is being able to share when I'm in pain with people that I love and care about. Like if I'm in a relationship with someone and I'm in pain around something that's happened, my tendency in the past is to not share that. So I used to think that I was being compassionate and taking the high road by like doing my best to forgive and move forward and kind of just like, oh, well, it's my fault, there's something wrong with me, or like I take like an over responsibility for what's happened, and I don't let the other person know like, hey, that hurt, ouch, I don't like that, or oh. And so my growing edge right now is practicing sharing that, and like it's scary because I'm not that great at it. I don't have experience in doing it, so like a lot of times I feel like I just genuinely don't know how to do it, because the last thing I want to do is cause someone pain back. I don't want to accuse someone of hurting me. I don't want to attack someone, right? I mean, that's one way when we're in pain, is to like attack. And I think this is part of the shadow side and the fear of Saturn-Pluto, is that tendency of that primitive form of psychological splitting, good versus bad, right versus wrong. It's a black and white schism. And the bigger the separation is between good and bad, right and wrong, often the more pain that's happening, because there's a lot of blaming, there's a lot of attacking, there's a power struggle. We're no longer in connection and balance and harmony with ourselves or the other person that we're relating to, or the other idea or group of people. And so how do I bridge the schisms? And I'm practicing right now doing my part by owning my feelings and taking responsibility, Saturn, for my experience. And, you know, as difficult as that is for me to do, the reward of doing that is already showing itself, because I'm entering into a new relational dynamic, a new call and response with the world. And I feel that I exist more in my relationships because I'm starting to show more of my true self, or my full self, which includes the times that I'm in pain and I'm not this, you know, superhuman, enlightened person who doesn't get angry or sad or upset with someone else.
So you're talking about how during Pluto-Saturn you can overcome schisms, or the potential for a schism, by revealing your depths of emotion?
Yeah, if we're willing to bridge the gaps between the things that disconnect ourselves from ourselves, and therefore from the rest of the world. So there is a disconnect. Let's say you do something that I feel hurt around. If I don't let you know, if I'm holding on to that pain and I don't let you know, like, oh, when you said that thing, it really hurt my feelings.
Right.
There's a disconnect now between you and I.
Right.
But if I don't find the courage to be able to tell you and share with you and reveal to you what my experience has been, I then become disconnected to myself. And the bigger the disconnection with myself, the bigger the disconnection between you and I will be. And so research has shown that people with low self-esteem, who have a hard time loving themselves and staying connected with themselves, show greater levels of disconnection with other people and the outside world. Those people are more prone to isolation, social isolation, emotional withdrawal and hiding, and therefore more disconnected from moments of joy,
right,
and love. So yes, Saturn and Pluto is a time to bridge the schisms in ourselves and therefore the outer world.
I'm just thinking how, just from my own understanding of the Pluto-Saturn elements of it, because Saturn can be the schism and Pluto can intensify schisms, but it's my way of thinking is that there's like a force of nature that you can align with that actually naturally overcomes schisms. But there's also a way in which that force of nature can intensify schisms if you're disconnected from yourself.
Yes. Every planetary alignment is an amplification of consciousness in its own way. So every planet amplifies consciousness in some way. Venus amplifies consciousness within the channel of love, beauty, art, music, harmony, relationship. Mercury amplifies consciousness through communication, ideas, words. So no matter what, every planet and every combination amplifies consciousness in some way that is quarterly true to that archetype or that archetypal combination. So Saturn-Pluto's tendency is to amplify either the schisms in our, like, first of all, yes, it amplifies the schisms. It shows us the ways that there's separation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we do when we awaken to the fact that there is a separation says a lot about our character, our morality, and our ethics. Because as soon as we become aware of something, we are then given both the power, Pluto, and the responsibility, Saturn, to choose how we're going to use that awareness. And we can use it by taking responsibility for our experience, Saturn, and therefore become more empowered, Pluto, or we can choose to, fall back asleep, move into denial, or fall into victim consciousness, and therefore, as soon as we get into victim consciousness, we inherently begin to perpetrate. So
you're saying a lot of stuff.
Yeah, sorry. I always do that.
I'll try to keep track of about 5 different really cool points to explore, I think.
Yeah.
And the last one, the victim perpetrator thing, put that over here for a second.
Okay, maybe we'll do that in part 2.
But I was, like, as we were talking about integrity, morality, and character, I was curious how Saturn-Pluto relates to those and whether the archetype itself constellates the potential for, I think you were saying that, the potential for deeper morality, character, and integrity.
Yes.
And the second thing I was trying to follow was in there. I'll watch the tape. I'll get it next time.
Sorry, I always do that.
It's okay. I've been saying with Jessica, in my personal life, maybe this is relevant to the Saturn-Pluto alignment. It's definitely relevant to Saturn square Mercury. So Saturn square Mercury timeout here.
Well,
it is a timeout.
I mean, it's a serious timeout because we've got to the time.
Perfect then.
Of the show.
This is the end of. Are we going to acknowledge that we're doing part 1 and part 2?
Yeah. So this is part 1, and then we're going to move into part 2.
We're trying to have a natural pause, so I think Saturn, Pluto, or Saturn, Mercury, which we have a stationary Mercury and a stationary Saturn.
Yeah.
Both square each other.
Yes.
And I have, in recent Saturn-Mercury alignments and my own personal transit, which I have right now, I've been realizing for me, in order to integrate things, especially, but also to ground myself, I've been actually letting the people that I'm close to know that for myself, because I actually need to move slow in general, that I like to now use the word pause, or please pause, Jessica.
Yeah.
Please pause, Jessica. Yeah. But also I sometimes say I'm pausing or pausing.
Yes.
And it gives me like the spaciousness to know that we can have some silence.
Yes.
To just integrate what's being said.
Yes.
So I might do that in the future here on Correlations.
It's a really good example of you taking responsibility for your needs. So like you had the awareness very recently that you needed to move slowly in the world, and that you needed to take pauses so that you could integrate. And as soon as you had that realization, it wasn't too long after that you took responsibility by letting me and others know, hey, sometimes I'm going to need to say please pause or pause, and you asked my consent, and you said, is that okay? I said, definitely. Thanks for letting me know. So I don't know to pause all the time unless you tell me. And then you do, and then I can respect that boundary.
It's been really helping me as a Pluto-Uranus-Mercury triple conjunction, which is a tendency to get really kind of high frequency. And then if I don't like pause to breathe, like you're saying, like this soft belly breathing, and then grounding like deep into the center of the earth, feeling myself connected to the depths of the earth, that's really helpful. So that's what I try to do. I'd say please pause.
Well, great. Let's end this by just rooting our feet on the floor. Feel free to join us if you feel called. And I'll just take us through a little grounding meditation.
Oh, great.
Okay, so this is one I like to do for being an empath.
Oh, good. It's a bonus for me. I know she's going to do this.
Let's just take a couple deep breaths here together. So in through the nose and out through the mouth. Again. One more time. And so I want you to imagine either a beam of light or a tree trunk or a rope, whatever you like, coming down from your root chakra and going down into the soil underneath. And I want you to see that tree trunk or that rope going down through the soil, down, 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 through the core of the earth, and anchoring yourself deep, deep within the earth. Just feeling that root all the way down. Rooting you in your body and into this moment. And I want you to choose a color of light that you feel called toward right now. For me, I'm feeling like a golden white light. It could be any color. Purple, red. And I want you to imagine that light coming up from that core of the earth, up the tree trunk, up the rope, and filling your entire body. From your toes of your feet to the top of your head. And as you fill your whole body up with this light, I see this golden white light, I'm going to stretch it out and surround my whole being. Front, back, sideways, above and below with this light. I ask for guidance and protection. And as my root chakra is deeply rooted into the core of the earth, I'm going to see the light come up each chakra from the first, second, third, fourth, bridging up to the fifth, sixth, and seventh. And I want to imagine your crown right here, opening as wide as you would like. And seeing that same light come from the heavens down in through your crown. And filling your body with the light once again from the heavenly realm. Maybe it's the same light or maybe it's a different color, whatever you see. And we see that light swirling together from the heavens and from the earth right here, probably somewhere around our fifth, fourth, third chakras, just swirling around, marrying together. And then the last phase here, we are going to put a translucent mirror all the way around our body, all the way around. And we ask that any unwanted or negative energy that isn't serving our highest good will be reflected off this mirror and handed back to wherever it came from. It's not ours to carry. And we bask in this light of love, protection, and guidance. It is so.
Thank you, Jessica. That's great. I feel so much more grounded.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It worked.
Well, we will see you all shortly for part 2.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.